On a bustling morning at Buckingham Palace, Jessica Miller, a 28-year-old tourist from New York, stood amidst the crowd filming and taking photos of the royal guards. She wore a bright yellow coat, instantly attracting the gaze of those around her. The guards stood stoically in their red uniforms and bare fur hats, embodying patience and honor. But Jessica, with her noisy and attention-seeking nature, found the silence of the guards boring. She laughed loudly, mocking the guards. "Is this a museum? Why don't you guys show any emotion?" Not content with just making a remark, Jessica continued to move closer, crossing the white line that tourists weren't supposed to pass. She laughed even louder, asking the guards to show some emotion for the picture. The crowd around her started turning to look, some annoyed, others pulling out their phones to record. Jessica enjoyed the attention, feeling like she was making the tour more exciting. She continued her teasing. "Hey, soldier boy, why don't you smile a little? Afraid the Queen's going to fire you?" Her words echoed in the still air, causing some people to react, but Jessica kept laughing, oblivious to the discomfort of those around her. However, Jessica's arrogance would soon face serious consequences. What she thought was just a joke was beginning to challenge the discipline and honor of the guards. Completely unaware of the seriousness of her actions, Jessica continued to move closer to the guard, ignoring the warnings from the crowd. She laughed loudly, enjoying the attention she was receiving. The more she mocked, the more she felt she was gaining the upper hand. At that moment, a voice from the crowd rang out, reminding her, "Show some respect for the tradition, miss, they're not here to be made fun of." However, Jessica paid no attention, simply waving her hand dismissively as if nothing mattered. "Tradition? Let them do their job. We're the tourists, we've paid," she sneered, unconcerned with the discomfort of those around her. The guard, unmoving, stood upright, completely silent, his gaze fixed on a single point. No matter what Jessica did, he maintained his stance, offering no response. But it seemed that the silence only made her more entertained, and Jessica decided to cross the line. She stepped over the white line, where tourists were not supposed to go. "Oh, look at him," Jessica said loudly, then reached out and touched the guard's uniform, as if inspecting its quality. The crowd began to react strongly. "Hey, you can't do that," a man shouted, but Jessica ignored him and continued. She smiled mockingly. "This is definitely tradition, right? No freedom here." Not stopping there, Jessica, with her arrogant attitude, continued to tease and even slapped the guard on the shoulder. This time, no one stayed silent. People in the crowd began to get angry, some unable to hold back and shouting, "Don't do that. It's disrespectful." The tension in the air was palpable, but the guard still did not move, as if nothing could shake him. His calmness only added to the crowd's respect, but for Jessica, it was just another part of her joke. The crowd began to worry that things might spiral out of control, while Jessica continued to challenge the guard, completely unaware that she had crossed a line from which there was no turning back. As Jessica, despite all the warnings from the crowd, continued her arrogant and disrespectful actions, the tension in the air grew stronger. She moved closer, groping the guard's uniform as if he were just an object for her to mock. "Not bad, this fabric must be custom-made, right?" she said sarcastically, then lightly slapped his shoulder. But as soon as Jessica made this move, the atmosphere around them became heavier than ever. It felt as though a fuse was waiting to explode. The crowd, from those who had started recording videos to those who were uncomfortable with Jessica's disrespectful behavior, began to speak up. One person shouted, "Don't do that, it's disrespectful." But Jessica just laughed loudly, ignoring the objections. Some people in the crowd turned away, while others continued to capture the moment. At this point, Jessica was certain she had complete control of the situation and just wanted to prove herself. However, what she didn't anticipate was the guard's reaction. Still standing motionless, he suddenly took a step forward, decisively and powerfully. "Ma'am, you have crossed the allowed line." "Step back immediately," his voice echoed through the space, causing Jessica to stop in her tracks. She froze, her face shifting from confidence to surprise. What she had thought was just a simple joke had now turned into a shock with the guard's firmness and authority. The tension in the crowd became more apparent than ever. All eyes were on Jessica, watching her stand stunned in the face of the guard's response. The crowd began to whisper, some people expressing approval of the guard's actions, while others continued recording to capture the moment. Jessica, now lacking her usual confidence, took a step back, her face flushed with embarrassment. The crowd fell silent, and all that could be heard were the quiet breaths of the onlookers. After being reprimanded by the guard, Jessica stood there, her initial confidence gradually fading, replaced by a sense of embarrassment and surprise. She hadn't expected such a simple request from the guard to force her to step back immediately. His gaze, strong and unwavering, made her face the reality that she had crossed a line that could not be easily undone. The crowd around her had shifted from anger to a sense of satisfaction, with some even beginning to clap, applauding the guard's disciplinary action. The atmosphere had now calmed, and the tension had diminished considerably. Jessica remained still, her eyes cast downward, trying to maintain her image, but unable to escape the rising feeling of shame. She saw the disdainful looks from the crowd, those who were now looking at her as if she were uncivilized. Still, she clung to the hope that she could turn the situation around, that this was just a harmless joke. She sighed and quickly said, "It was just a joke, it's not a big deal." However, no one paid attention to her. A security officer approached from a distance, walking firmly with a determined attitude. "Ma'am, your actions are unacceptable," he said, his tone clear and serious. "Please step out of this area." Jessica tried to protest, but there was no longer any support from the crowd. The looks from the people around her seemed to urge her to leave, and she had no choice but to comply. As Jessica stepped out of the area, the crowd erupted into applause, many cheering in approval. Finally, someone did the right thing, one person in the crowd said, causing others to laugh. Everyone felt that the guard's actions had not only defended his honor but also served as a reminder of the importance of respecting tradition and discipline. The guard, having handled the situation, returned to his position, standing motionless once again. He didn't show any expression, but the way the crowd now looked at him had completely changed. Jessica walked away reluctantly, her gaze sweeping over the crowd, and she could feel every eye focused on her. The arrogance that once defined her slowly faded, replaced by a deep sense of shame, an awareness that she had crossed a line. The clapping, laughter, and comments around her made her feel as if she were exposed to the light, with no place to hide. With each step, despite her attempts to maintain composure, she could feel the humiliation, the sense of defeat in her heart. She could hear the whispers from those around her. Who does she think she is, daring to do that? No respect at all. As Jessica left the area, she felt the emptiness of herself in that moment. Everything seemed to collapse suddenly. The people standing around her no longer looked at her with excitement, but instead with disdain and discomfort. Surely, her name would be criticized everywhere, especially on social media, where videos of her actions spread quickly. This was a disrespect to tradition, truly shameful, one person in the crowd said, sparking sympathy and support for the Royal Guard. But in the moment as she prepared to leave, something shifted. The guard, with his impassive expression, remained in his position, but now he was not just a part of the ceremony. He had become a symbol of discipline, honor, and unshakable respect. The admiration for him from the crowd transformed into a powerful wave of respect, and even those who disagreed with Jessica's actions had to nod in admiration at his steadfastness. No one saw the guard as a mere decoration for tourists to take pictures with anymore. He was a respected soldier, a role model for everyone in patience and responsibility. When Jessica looked back one last time toward the guard, she noticed the eyes of the crowd, now filled with respect and admiration for him. But she, filled with shame, could not face them. She could only silently leave, knowing she had not only hurt herself, but also the values she had never fully understood before. The next day, when Jessica returned to Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere around her was noticeably different. The crowd was larger, and many people had clearly come not only to sightsee but also to witness the famous woman from the day before. She could feel the scrutinizing stares from all around. Despite her efforts to avoid attention, Jessica couldn't help but notice the judgmental looks, and some even began recording her as she entered the area. The feelings of shame and regret rushed back, making it almost unbearable. The criticisms from the previous day still echoed in her mind. She wondered if people would continue to look at her with those same disapproving eyes, and if they now saw her as a villain. While Jessica felt uneasy, a number of people seemed to enjoy the aftermath of yesterday's event, as if they were witnessing a historical moment. Some people looked back at her with cold stares, while others whispered among themselves about the embarrassment she had caused. However, no one spoke directly to her. Jessica could feel their eyes piercing through her, their looks filled with rejection and contempt. It felt like a punch to her self-esteem. She thought, "What have I done?" But as she passed through the crowd, something strange happened. A man stepped up to the guard, who stood motionless as a symbol of discipline and tradition. He gently bowed his head and said, "Thank you for maintaining the image and honor of England." His words echoed not only in Jessica's mind, but also in the minds of those around her. The admiration and respect for the guard seemed stronger than ever. The man's words made Jessica realize that no matter what she did, she couldn't change how people viewed the guard. He was not just a protector, but a symbol of values that she had inadvertently offended. That realization left her feeling confused, but it also made her understand that whether she felt ashamed or not, the guard still stood there, steadfast and unchanged. In that moment, she understood that her actions had not only caused criticism but had also helped others reevaluate the true value of the tradition and discipline the guard represented. After yesterday's incident, Jessica felt like she had been cornered with no way out. She tried to hide her unease, but the gaze of the crowd made it impossible to ignore the feeling of defeat. Each step she took in the Buckingham Palace grounds was accompanied by judgmental looks and constant whispers. The overwhelming sense of shame grew stronger, and the online criticisms from the previous day only made everything worse. She couldn't help but think about the videos circulating, the mocking comments where she had become the main target. She had once believed she could do whatever she wanted, but now she realized she had been wrong. Today, the crowd was not only larger but also showed absolute respect for the guard. When they looked at him, they didn't see just a soldier, they saw a symbol of patience and discipline. The admiration and reverence directed at the guard made Jessica feel smaller and smaller. Yet, even though she felt as if she were on a blacklist in the minds of those around her, some still couldn't stop looking at her, and that made her feel the loneliness and isolation even more clearly. While Jessica thought about everything that had happened, a scene left her stunned. The guard still stood there, motionless as always, but today he was not just part of the ceremony, he had become an irreplaceable symbol of respect. She recalled the words of the man from yesterday when he bowed his head to thank the guard for maintaining tradition. Those words hit her hard, helping her realize that the value of actions like those of the guard could not be underestimated. Today, the crowd was no longer just tourists, but people who felt respect and wanted to protect those values. Jessica realized she couldn't change what had happened, but she had learned a valuable lesson about respect and patience. And as she looked at the guard, though she couldn't change the past, she knew that at least she had come to understand that respect was necessary, not just for others, but also for herself.